20%. That's the number of new businesses that fail within just 2 years. 1 in 5 entrepreneurs see their dreams crash and burn before they even get a chance to take off. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be that way. Not if you're prepared, not if you know what I'm about to tell you, because today we're going to dive deep into the 10 essential steps that you need to take before becoming an entrepreneur. This isn't some fluffy motivational speech. This is the real deal, the nitty-gritty that really separates the winners from the losers in the business world. So let me paint you a picture, because every day new entrepreneurs, they go ahead and they jump headfirst into new businesses with nothing but passion and a half-baked idea. They think they're ready to conquer the world. They've watched a few YouTube videos, they've read a couple of books, and suddenly they think they're the next Steve Jobs. Now, I can say that because I used to be that guy. And this is really, I would say, the way most entrepreneurs are, especially at the beginning of their journey, and especially if you're trying to figure out everything on your own. But here's the brutal truth. An entrepreneur in that position hasn't really laid the groundwork yet. They haven't prepared themselves for the harsh realities of entrepreneurship. They're kind of like soldiers going off to war with minimal training, without any weapons. And guess what happens? That's right, they get slaughtered out there on the business battlefield. That's why these 10 steps are so crucial for your training. They're your weapons. And if you take them seriously, they could be the difference between you really becoming another, failure statistic on this side, or on the flip side, becoming that incredible, successful entrepreneur that you visualize and that you see yourself becoming. So let's break down these 10 essential steps, because they really are both your oxygen and your roadmap. Now, first up, just in case you don't already know this, you need to learn how to self-motivate, because in the world of entrepreneurship, there's no boss breathing down your neck. There's no set schedule. There's no one pushing you but yourself. So you need to be your own cheerleader most of the time, and you need to be your own drill sergeant all of the time. So let me tell you a story. In fact, when I first started my business, my most recent one, I had people telling me I was crazy. Gary, why would you leave a stable 6-figure job? I was working for Mercedes-Benz at the time. I had a large book of clients. I ran my own sales teams, and life overall was pretty good. But I knew I didn't want to spend all of it working for someone else. I wanted to work for myself, and I had also done that in the past. And this last time around, I accepted early on that these first few years, they were going to be challenging. They were going to be a little painful, which they were, to say the least. In fact, they were a lot more than a little painful, to tell you the truth. But every morning, I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd tell myself, I'd say, okay, Gary, the work that you're doing here is for yourself. It's for your family. You're building something new, and you're doing something that matters. And I can tell you, there were days when that self-talk was the only thing that got me out of bed. But here's the thing, the key to self-motivation. It's not just about self-talk or positive talk. It requires action, right? It's about building habits and systems that really keep you moving forward when you don't feel like it. It's about setting those small, achievable goals every day and then holding yourself accountable. Now, maybe for you, that means it's a vision board. Maybe it's something like a daily journal. Find what works for you and then stick to it, because when the criticism hits, and trust me, it will, you need to be able to really pick yourself up, to stand tall, and to keep moving forward. Now, hey, if you're new to my channel, this is Start of 3. I'm Gary Smith. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I'm a business and marketing adjunct professor, and I'm an entrepreneur. Now, if you like what you're learning so far, just go ahead and smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because that lets me know to go ahead and continue creating more content like this each week for you. That said, number 2, save your money. I almost made this number 1 on the list, and I can't stress this enough. Before you even start to think about starting a business, you need a financial cushion. You need to build a safety net. And here's why. In the beginning, your business it'll just eat money like a hungry beast. You'll have expenses coming at you from every other direction. You'll have things like supplies, marketing, legal fees, and 1,000 other things that you never even thought about and couldn't imagine. And what about revenue, you say? Well, that might not come in for several months. And I don't know what industry that you're entering. I also don't know what type of business that you're starting, but the average is 18 to 24 months. This is across industries. However, there are, of course, many variables that could move that timetable one direction or the other. And I'll tell you, I've seen many promising businesses go under simply because they ran out of cash before they could gain enough traction to really get going. In fact, that's usually what happens to businesses. That's the most common thing that happens. It's like, how long can you hold your breath? So I would encourage you to think of your money as your oxygen, because without it, your business will die along with your dreams of entrepreneurship. So that brings us to the question, how much should you have saved? Well, a general rule of thumb, or a good rule of thumb, I should say, is to have about 6 months to cover both your business and your personal expenses. But that's the bare minimum. 12 months would be more ideal. And that's if you're going into entrepreneurship full time, of course. Now, on the other hand, if you're launching maybe a side venture or a side hustle, which is a safer but the slower route, you don't need, of course, as much money on hand, as much cash that's there, because your day job should still be covering your current personal and living expenses. But we're moving forward here under the assumption that you want your business to be your full-time gig, at least eventually, right? If not sooner. So the quickest way to achieve that is to start cutting unnecessary expenses now. So that daily latte for $6, gone. That subscription service that you barely use, go ahead and cancel that. Every dollar that you save now, that could actually keep your business afloat later. And then number 3, learn how to sell. Now, everyone should learn this skill regardless of your professional path. But as an entrepreneur, the ability to sell, this is a necessity. And I'm not talking about memorizing some cheesy script. That's not selling. That's just being a phony. But what I'm talking about is embracing authenticity, understanding human psychology, and really learning to communicate value to others, and then closing deals, right? That's selling, not memorizing some script with words that you probably would never actually use in your regular everyday life. Now, let me give you an example. I once watched a guy try to pitch his product to an investor. Now, he spent about 10 minutes straight just lifting off features and talking about processes and gigabytes and all this type of technical jargon. And the investor's eyes just started to glaze over. Needless to say, he didn't make that sale because he didn't understand that selling isn't about features. It's about benefits, right? It's about solving problems. It's about showing the other person how your product or service will actually make their life or their situation better. Now, in this investor's case, what would have made his life better is to achieve his financial goals, which the guy giving the pitch completely missed. Now, here's a challenge for you. In fact, it's really more than that. It's an exercise. And I have my students perform this each term at the university. But practice pitching your business idea to your family and friends. But here's the catch, okay? You can't mention a single feature. Now, this is going to be hard at first because you can only talk about how it solves problems and how it improves lives. But as you do, you'll be able to determine where your pitch kind of goes off the rails. And in a short period of time, your pitch will start to improve. It'll transform exponentially, more than what you might think. Now, next on the list, get yourself some great mentors. Now, there's no substitute for experience. And if you can learn from someone else, you're already going to be ahead of the game. Now, I'm not talking about just watching some YouTube videos or reading a lot of books. Those are great, and I do them myself, and I recommend them. But that alone is not enough, right? You need some real personal mentorship. In other words, someone who's been in the trenches, someone who can really walk you through, give you some specific tailored advice. And I can tell you, those times where I made those biggest strides in my business and in my endeavors, professional life, I had great mentors. Now, when I was first with Mercedes-Benz, my mentors were Lee Phelps and Bob Mangione. Now, these were just two incredible human beings, a lot of knowledge, a lot of skill, tons of success. And I was able to learn and progress quickly because I had implemented their advice. So I was able to benefit from their decades of experience. And so I accelerated very quickly due to their mentorship. Then later, when I wanted to start training and lifting weights at a much more serious level back then, I hired Dave Fisher. He was the owner, the founder of Powerhouse Gym in Torrance, California. And so I surrounded myself for about an hour and a half each day in the morning by professionals who lifted weights for a living. And they either had pro cards or they had NPC titles, and these were legitimate power lifters. And I'll tell you, had I not done that, I never would have made those strides back then that I had accomplished. And when I wanted to go into teaching at the university part-time as an adjunct professor outside of my business, I talked to other professors who then put me in touch with the BAB group, who completely reworked my CV and my resume. In fact, they taught me how CVs are created for higher ed, which, by the way, is totally different. It's a different process than any other profession on earth, and it's unique to academia. And if you don't know how to format your CV according to those very precise, somewhat secret standards, you won't even get an interview, let alone a teaching position. Now, my point in sharing these experiences are just to really drive home the fact that while you can attempt or try to do everything on your own, you probably won't enjoy the same level of success. And it'll likely take you longer, much longer, than if you had some good mentors with the knowledge and the experience and the skills that they can share with you. Because their mistakes can be your shortcut and their network can be your opportunity. So find at least one good mentor. Two is better, but one at least, and make that a goal. Don't stop until you achieve it. Now, fifth, build networks and relationships like your life depends on it, because in business, it kind of does. Your network is more closely tied to your net worth than what you might initially think. In fact, every person that you meet, that could be a potential customer or partner or an investor. There have been deals worth millions come from, a single round of golf or a simple conversation at a coffee shop. I've seen partnerships form from chance meetings at conferences. I mean, think about it. The person sitting next to you on that flight home, that could be your next big client. But here's the thing about networking. It's not about just collecting, names or business card or contacts on LinkedIn. It's about building genuine relationships. It's about providing value before you ask for anything in return, before you try to sell something. Here's a networking hack that you can try. At your next event, don't focus on pitching yourself. Instead, focus on connecting other people. Be the one who introduces people who could benefit from knowing each other. Do this, and I'll tell you, you'll quickly become known as a valuable connector. That's someone who people really want to know, someone who's always in demand. And then sixth. Now, this one might be a little hard to hear, but if your plan is to go full-time, you need to work 70 to 80 hours a week for at least a year before you do that. Why? Because it's a test. It's a proving ground. It's your own personal boot camp. Can you handle the grind? Can you push yourself beyond what you thought possible? This is important to find out, because let me tell you, when you're running a business of your own, there's no clocking out at 5 p.m. It doesn't end then. There's no weekend, there's no vacations. You're always on, right? Especially at the start, during those first few years, those first 3 years of business. And, I'm not saying you need to do this forever, but you need to at least do this for a year, because it'll teach you invaluable skills. You'll learn time management, you'll learn prioritization, you'll learn, how you work when you're tired. What type of decisions do you make when you're discouraged? They're going to be different than when you're really happy, what happens when you push yourself, everything inside of you wants to quit. You need to find out the answers to those questions. And if you can do this in your current job, then great. You'll probably learn some new skills. You might get promoted. If not, find a side hustle to start alongside that. The point is to push yourself beyond your limits and determine how you cope with that, because here's the truth. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and it's better to find that out early on if you have what it takes. And if you want to go through all of that before you go ahead and invest a bunch of money, a bunch of time, walk out on a really good job, and put all kinds of strains and stresses on your personal and family relationship, because that is what happens. Now, number 7, sharpen your analysis and research skills, because in business, information is power. What I mean by that is you need to be able to spot trends, understand market dynamics, and really see those connections where others don't. I'm talking about going beyond just a simple Google search. In other words, you really want to dive into those industry reports, those financial statements, all the market research, right? Set up some Google alerts, in fact, for your competitors. Attend industry conferences, and always stay curious. Just this skill alone will help you make better decisions and get you in the mindset of spotting opportunities that others miss. It also really helps you generate those insights that help you pivot before the market shifts, not after. And here's an activity that you can implement and really learn something from. Pick an industry that you're interested in, right? Spend the next week in your free time researching everything you can about it. Look at the major players. What are the emerging startups? What are the technological trends? And then try to predict where that industry will be down the road in 5 years. This kind of thinking is what really separates entrepreneurs from the rest. And ideally, you want to begin kind of cultivating that ability to see at least a couple moves ahead in order to, get in front of opportunities rather than, trying to play catch up after they've already passed you by. Next, start growing your audience now. Don't wait until you have a product. Don't wait until your business is up and running. Start now. Use social media. Start a blog, write some articles, create valuable content, and build those relationships with potential customers before you even have something to sell them. You don't have to wait. When you do decide to launch, you'll have a ready-made customer base. But here's the key. It's not about promoting yourself. It's about providing value. Share your knowledge, help solve some problems for others, and really engage with your audience. For example, let's say that you're planning to start maybe a fitness business, right? Start sharing workout tips on Instagram. You can go on there and upload some tips. Discuss, I would say, the importance of nutrition on YouTube, right? Maybe you want to start a podcast where you interview fitness experts. By the time that you launch your business, you already have an audience and they know, they like, and they trust you, which they should at that point. And then number 9, get real with yourself about your strengths and your weaknesses. And I mean brutally honest. This isn't the time for ego. This is a time for raw, unfiltered truth. What are you good at and what are you bad at? Right? Use this information to really choose the right industry and to know where you'll need to hire help. I can give you an example from my own life. I know I'm great at sales and motivation and running sales teams and putting people together. But I also know I'm not the best when it comes to details and design. So when I started my businesses, I made sure I hired people who could complement those skills. And this doesn't have to be full time. That's not what I'm talking about. You can go on Fiverr, you can go on Upwork, and you can hire someone on a part-time or freelance basis to do the work that you either don't like or you're not good at. Like that was the case for me. And then you can focus on running those other more important parts of your business. And number 10, embrace pressure testing. Now, take on challenging projects with tight deadlines. Do things like maybe volunteer for high-stake presentations. The more comfortable that you get with pressure, the better that you'll perform as an entrepreneur. Because let me tell you, running a business, it's all about performing under pressure because you're always going to be under pressure. It's about making tough decisions with limited information and time. It's about keeping cool when everything seems to be falling apart. So start small, right? Set some ambitious goals for yourself, but take on those projects at work that nobody else wants. Maybe speak at some conferences, even though public speaking terrifies you, because the more you push yourself out of your comfort zone, the more you'll be prepared for handling the pressures of entrepreneurship. Now, I will say this, if I had to pick the most critical step out of these 10, it would definitely be the first one. Why? Because learning how to self-motivate is what entrepreneurship is all about. It's definitely a roller coaster ride. So the ability to push yourself, to believe in yourself when no one else does, you need to have that if you really want to move forward. Everything else really builds on that foundation. Think about it. Saving money requires self-discipline. Learning how to sell requires self-confidence. Working long hours, constantly learning new skills. All of these require you to push yourself, to motivate yourself, to really keep going when things get tough. And I tell you that because I've seen a lot of really brilliant ideas fail because entrepreneurs, they just couldn't motivate themselves. They couldn't push through those hard times. They couldn't get through that wall. But fortunately, you're not like those entrepreneurs who quit, right? And the proof of that is you're here watching this video, hopefully taking some notes or soaking it up right now. So you're investing the time to learn and apply the knowledge that we're discussing here today. So there you have it, right? The 10 essential steps to really do, I would say, before becoming an entrepreneur. Now, if you want to know more about how to launch, grow, and thrive during those first few years of your business, just click or swipe the screen to watch this next video.